The snow fell quietly over Dragonstone, a place colder than it should have been that year. The sky, grey and heavy, loomed like it carried secrets too old to speak. Inside the stone walls of the ancient Targaryen stronghold, two children ran through. The halls, one with hair like silver silk and eyes as purple as violets in moonlight. The other, dark-haired, quieter, with eyes that watched everything. Daenerys Targaryen was only 3 when they brought the boy in. He was sick, covered, in grime, half-starved and crying. Her brother Viserys had protested, of course. "He's a Stark," he'd hissed. "He's not one of us." But the old knight, Sir Willem Darry, had ignored him. The boy had no name. Or maybe he did, but they had to hide it like a flame from the wind. So they gave him one. Jon. Jon Waters, they said, a name common enough not to raise suspicion, yet close enough to the truth for it to stick. At first, Daenerys had been afraid of him. He didn't talk much. He had nightmares, too. Violent ones that made him wake screaming. But when the nightmares came, it wasn't Viserys who comforted him. It was her. A small hand reaching out in the dark, whispering stories of dragons and brave knights. Stories she'd barely understood, but had made up to keep him from crying. And from those nights grew something deeper than friendship. A bond carved in loneliness and sealed by shared shadows. Years passed. Dragonstone became a cage they couldn't escape, ruled by Viserys's bitterness and rage. He hated the boy, more than anything, especially when Daenerys chose Jon's company over his. "You think he's your blood," Viserys spat one night, red-eyed from wine. "But he's nothing, just a snow rat clinging to royal scraps." But Jon had grown tall, strong. He trained with old swords in the armory. Sir Willem taught him how to fight like a knight, and Dany watched from the shadows, always watching. She knew there was something about him, something noble. The way he moved, the way he never let his anger show, even when Viserys humiliated him. It was like fire smouldering under ice. Then one day, Sir Willem died in his sleep. The only adult who had protected them was gone, and the air around the 3 children thickened with something colder than snow. Viserys wasted no time. He took control, locked down the castle even harder, and made Jon's life hell. But Jon didn't leave. He stayed for Dany, only for her. "I won't leave you with him," Jon told her one night, after Viserys had struck her across the face for speaking up. "I swear it." And she had clung to him then, like the world was ending. Maybe it was. When Daenerys turned 16, the messengers came from across the narrow sea, Illyrio Mopatis. He brought promises and whispers. A Khal was willing to marry the Targaryen girl. Power could be regained, thrones reclaimed, but Illyrio hadn't expected Jon. "Who is he?" the fat man asked Viserys, voice dripping suspicion. "A knight? A bastard? He carries himself like someone important." Viserys didn't answer. His silence was enough. Jon knew things were changing, fast and badly. The night before the wedding, he found Dany alone in the Godswood garden, staring up at the moon. She looked older somehow, though her face was still soft with girlhood. "Do you want this?" he asked her, voice low. "I don't know," she whispered, "but I want to be free." Jon understood that better than anyone. They had been prisoners together their whole lives. Now she might be free. But what about him? She reached for his hand. "Come with me." That one moment, her fingers touching his, eyes full of pleading, cracked something open in his chest. But before he could answer, the dragons stirred. Not the real ones, not yet, but the ones that had been sleeping inside them. The Dothraki Sea stretched endlessly in every direction, a wild, untamed land of golden grass and roaring hooves. Jon had never seen anything like it. Back in Dragonstone, the world had felt small, like a cage with salt in the air and shadows in the corners. Here, everything was wide and loud, ruled by men who spoke with swords and rode like demons born of storms. He didn't belong here, And yet he was here, because she had asked him to come. Daenerys rode beside Khal Drogo now, her silver hair braided and threaded with tiny bells. She looked like a queen already, even if she didn't feel like one. Jon stayed behind her, not too far, never too close, just enough to keep watch. He was the only shadow from her past who hadn't tried to control her, and the only one she truly trusted. The Khal's blood riders didn't trust Jon. They sneered when he passed, calling him names in a tongue he couldn't yet understand, but he knew what they meant. Foreign, weak, not one of us. He didn't care. He was used to it. He'd heard. Worse from Viserys. But Drogo watched him too, silently, measuring. The Khal didn't speak much, but his eyes were sharp, and Jon knew it. He walked the camp like a man prepared to die at any moment, not because he wanted to, but because he would, if that's what it took to protect her. Daenerys had changed since the wedding. The quiet, frightened girl from Dragonstone was slowly being replaced. There was steel in her now, fire in her eyes. The Dothraki didn't see it yet. They only saw a pale, small thing riding at Drogo's side. But Jon saw it. He saw it the night she stood before the Khalasar and demanded to learn their language, not through a translator, but with her own tongue. He saw it when she told Viserys to stay back, and for the first time he listened, and he saw it the moment she called herself Khaleesi, not in fear, but in power. But power made enemies. One night, as the camp slept under the wide black sky, Viserys crept into her tent, drunk and half-mad, ranting about crowns and dragons and how Jon was poisoning her mind. Jon had been sleeping outside. He heard the shouting first, then the sound of something crashing. When he burst inside, he saw Viserys with a knife to Dany's throat. "She's mine," he screamed. "You think you can take her from me? You think you're one of us?" Jon didn't speak. He just moved. He disarmed Viserys so fast the older boy didn't even see it coming. The knife clattered to the ground. Jon slammed him to the dirt, pressing a knee into his chest, eyes blazing with fury. "You touch her again," he said, "and I swear by whatever gods you believe in, I'll kill you myself." Viserys spat blood and curses, but Jon didn't flinch, and Dany, from behind them both, whispered, "Let him go." Jon looked back at her, confused. Her face was calm, cold even. There was something in her eyes that hadn't been there before. "Let him go," she repeated. "He's not worth your hands getting dirty." Jon stood up slowly. Viserys crawled away, his pride more shattered than his body. That was the last time he ever tried to lay a hand on her. After that night, everything shifted. Drogo began to acknowledge Jon, not with words, that wasn't his way, but when Jon entered the circle of riders, they stopped mocking. When he trained, they watched. When he spoke, they listened. And Dany started to lead, not just as a wife, not just as a Khaleesi, but as someone who might one day command fire and blood. One night, as they sat beside a low fire, Jon turned to her. "Oh, you don't need me anymore," he said softly. She looked at him, hurt flashing in her eyes. "That's not true. You're strong now, stronger than I've ever seen you. And that strength is because of you," she said, her voice cracking. There was a long silence. The fire popped between them. "You're not just my friend, Jon," she whispered. "You're my only truth." He didn't answer. Couldn't, because deep down he knew the truth too, and it scared him. Whatever they were becoming, it was dangerous. Not because it was wrong, but because the world wasn't ready for it. It began with whispers, strange ones. A merchant from Karth brought scrolls sealed in dragon wax, whispering of old bloodlines and secret heirs. A red priestess passed through the Khalasar, staring too long at Jon, murmuring prayers in High Valyrian under her breath. And then there was the old man, a maester, half-blind, traveling east with a caravan. He recognized Jon, not his name, not his face, but the shape of him. "He has the look," the Maester had said. The north is in his bones, but the fire, that's in his blood. Jon had dismissed it as nonsense. People always saw what they wanted, and yet, deep inside, something had begun to itch at his soul. A question too dangerous to speak aloud. Who am I, really? Meanwhile, Daenerys only grew stronger. She commanded Drogo's attention now, not as a bride, but as an equal. She made decisions, chose their path, advised him on diplomacy with cities across the narrow sea. The Dothraki began to follow her without needing the Khale's command. But Jon noticed something else. She was pulling away. Not by choice, perhaps, but by fate. Their long talks by the fire grew shorter. Her eyes often stared past him now, focused on some vision only she could see. And when she did speak, her words were bigger, of thrones, of kingdoms, of justice. And then, one night, the Red Priestess returned. Her name was Melisandre. She came in silence, her red robes dragging across the dirt, eyes glowing with that unnatural fire. She spoke to Dany first, in private. No one knew what was said, but afterward Dany wouldn't eat. She wouldn't sleep. She sat under the moon, trembling. Jon approached her after 2 days. She said the dragons are waking, Dany whispered, not even looking at him. She said I will be their mother, and that the fire must choose its king. Jon didn't understand. What fire? She turned her eyes to him then, hollow and haunted. You. The word hit him like ice. Me? She knows something, Dany said. Something about your blood. She says you're not who you think you are, that your blood is not just northern but royal, Targaryen royal. Jon backed away. That's madness. Is it? Her voice cracked. You think I haven't wondered? Why Ser Willem brought you? Why Viserys hated you so much? You fight like a dragon. You endure like ice. You've never belonged anywhere, and neither have I. He stared at her, heart racing. You think I'm your brother? I don't know, she said, tears finally falling. Maybe. Or maybe something worse. Jon shook his head. That can't be true. I'm Ned Stark's bastard. But even as he said it, the words felt thin, because something had always been off. Ned Stark, a man so bound by honor, had lied about his own son. Why? Unless Jon wasn't his son, unless he was someone else's. Dany stood then, wiping her face. Melisandre said only fire can reveal the truth. Jon frowned. What does that mean? She wants you to step into the flames. Jon laughed bitterly. She's insane. Maybe, Dany whispered. But so were the first Dragon Lords. Jon turned away. Everything was spinning now, his entire life, every moment, built on a lie. He couldn't breathe. Later, that night, the camp was still. Most had gone to sleep. Jon stood alone near the fire pit, watching the flames flicker. He felt their heat pull at him, like something inside him responded to it. Melisandre appeared again, silent as always. You are the song of ice and fire, she said softly, and your truth lies beyond the burn. He looked at the fire, then back at her. And if I die, then you were never meant to rule. The next morning, Daenerys was gone. She had taken her blood riders and headed east toward the Red Waste. No explanation, no goodbye. Only a message left for Jon. If you are a dragon, you'll find me. If not, you were never mine to begin with. The air in the temple was thick with smoke and ash. Jon stood at the edge of the pyre, surrounded by silence. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The temple of R'hllor, hidden deep within. The hills beyond Vaes Dothrak was nothing more than crumbling stones and scorched earth. But the fire inside, it burned like a heart refusing to die. Melisandre was waiting. She had brought him here alone. No guards, no followers. Just her and the flames, and the promise of a truth that could destroy him. You don't have to do this, she said softly, her voice unusually gentle. You can return to the world you know, forget the fire, forget the throne, forget her." Jon didn't answer. His mind was already too far gone, spinning with questions and ghosts. His whole life had been a shadow, and now he stood on the edge of something that might turn that shadow into something terrifying. "What happens if it's true?" he asked, eyes fixed on the fire. Melisandre tilted her head. "Then you are not Jon Snow. You are Aegon Targaryen, the son of Rhaegar and Lyanna, the last dragon heir." Jon said nothing. That name, Aegon, felt like a stone in his throat, heavy, cold, foreign. And yet, it rang like a half-remembered song in his bones. Melisandre raised her hands. The flames behind her roared as if they obeyed her will. "Step into the fire, Jon. Let it judge you." His heart pounded. He glanced at the dry logs, the soaked oil, the dancing heat. No armor, no sword, nothing between his flesh and the flames. It would hurt, it would burn, and maybe it would reveal the truth. He took a breath, closed his eyes, and walked into the fire. The pain came first, blinding, white-hot pain that tore through him like knives. He screamed, he staggered, his skin blistered, peeled, or so he thought. And then something changed. The pain turned into pressure, then into warmth, then into light. And then he saw them. Visions, not dreams, not memories, real. A man with silver hair, sad violet eyes, Rhaegar, singing to a woman with dark hair and a swollen belly. Lyanna, whispers, promises. If he lives, they'll kill him. He has the blood of the dragon and the wolf. He is the song, a crib, a name, a lie told in honor's name. Ned Stark's face, tears in his eyes, holding the baby close. "You must never tell. He'll die if they know." And then the fire swallowed everything. When Jon awoke, he was lying in the ashes. The fire had gone out. His clothes were burnt, but his skin was untouched. Not even a scar. Around him, the stones glowed faintly. Melisandre knelt beside him, her face filled with something close to awe. "You are reborn," she whispered. "A true Targaryen, a dragon of both ice and fire." Jon sat up slowly. His hands trembled, his mind swam. But the truth was clear now. He was not a bastard. He was not a Snow, and he was not just Daenerys's shadow. He was her equal. But with that truth came a new weight, heavier than any sword he had ever carried. Because now he had to find her, and he had to decide what to do with the truth. Across the sands of the Red Waste, Daenerys stood. Before her newborn dragons, Rhaegal, Viserion and Drogon, freshly hatched from fire and blood. Her face was streaked with tears. She had felt something rip through the sky that night, a call, a scream. She turned toward the east, and far, far away, Jon turned west. The dragon and the wolf were coming back together, but neither of them knew what it would cost. The sun scorched the Red Waste like a cruel god. The sand, hot and endless, stretched beyond the horizon. Daenerys stood tall amidst the heat, draped in flowing white, her dragons perched on her shoulders and arms, no longer babies, but still growing, their wings flickering shadows across the dunes. She looked like a queen, but she felt like something else. Empty. She had left Jon behind because the truth scared her, because the fire whispered things to her that no one else could hear, because she needed to become something more than a frightened girl hiding behind a man's protection. But every night since she left, she had dreamt of him, burning, bleeding, or walking through fire with eyes made of flame. And now he stood before her again. Jon came to her camp alone, covered in dust and ash, eyes sharp, posture different. He didn't carry himself like a bastard anymore. He moved like someone who had faced death and walked away untouched. She stared at him from across the camp. Neither said a word for a long time. Finally she spoke, her voice a whisper. "Did the fire burn you?" "No," he said. "It revealed me." She nodded slowly, heart sinking even as her soul rose. "You're one of us?" He stepped closer. "I'm Rhaegar's son, Lyanna Stark's too. My name was Aegon." Daenerys flinched. She had always feared that truth, because it meant he wasn't just her protector. He was her kin, her blood, her rival, and her destiny. The dragon shrieked suddenly, not in warning but in recognition. Rhaegal leapt from a rock and landed beside Jon, purring low in his throat. The others followed, curious, circling him. Drogon, the fiercest of the three, sniffed at Jon's hand, then bowed his head. Daenerys gasped. "No one has ever done that before," she whispered. "Not even Drogo." Jon didn't answer. His eyes were on her, and in that moment they both knew the world would not let them be only what they had been. "I didn't want this," he said quietly. "I didn't ask for any of it." "But you are it," Dany replied. "You're a dragon, Jon. You have the blood of kings, maybe more right than me." "I don't care about thrones," he said, stepping closer. "I care about you." She wanted to believe that, desperately, but doubt had already taken root in her. "If the people find out who you are," she began. "They will," Jon said, "but we decide what it means." She looked away, the wind catching her hair, the dragons circling high above. "If we rule together, they'll fear us. If we don't," he said, "they'll destroy us." That night, they sat beneath the stars, alone. No fire, just silence and the cool hum of destiny curling between them. "I used to dream of love," Dany said, her voice fragile. "Before the war, before the blood. I thought it would feel like safety, like home." Jon reached out, brushing her fingers. "And now?" She didn't pull away. "Now it feels like a sword pointed at my throat." He understood. He felt the same, because between them was not just love, it was prophecy. Rhaegar's son, the last dragon, the true heir, and the queen who would take back the world, but not together, not without consequences. The next day, the Unsullied arrived. Grey Worm brought a message from the east. Slaver's Bay had fallen into chaos again. The masters were rising, cities were burning. They needed Daenerys, and she needed Jon. But with his presence came questions. Rumors spread fast. Some said he was her consort. Others said he was her brother. A few whispered a darker tale, that he would steal her crown. Their camp became divided, some loyal to Dany, others drawn to Jon's calm strength, his quiet authority. The dragons didn't help. They followed. Jon now too. One morning, Missandei found Daenerys alone, staring into a mirror. "Do you trust him?" she asked. Daenerys didn't answer right away. "I love him," she said. "And that is the most dangerous thing in the world." The first betrayal came quietly, a poisoned cup left in the shadows of Daenerys's tent during a meeting of her council. She didn't drink it. Drogon knocked it aside with a growl before she could. But the message was clear. Someone wanted her dead. Jon was the first to act. He ordered the guards doubled. No one entered the Queen's tent without his approval. He took watch himself most nights, standing outside like a silent wolf in the dark, blade always at his side. But it wasn't just her life in danger anymore. Whispers had spread like wildfire through the camp. The word Aegon hung in the air like a curse. Soldiers began to salute him as often as they bowed to her. Some called him the true king. Even though Jon had never claimed such a title, he hated it every time, but Daenerys saw it differently. "What if you are meant to rule?" she asked one night, her voice low, almost accusing. "I don't want it," Jon said again. "I never have." "But they do," she snapped. "The people, my army, even the dragons." Her anger wasn't just about power, it was about fear. Fear of being replaced, fear of being forgotten. After everything she'd endured, exile, abuse, betrayal, now, just as she was close to reclaiming her birthright, he had appeared like a storm from the past. And he didn't even want it. That made it worse. In the weeks that followed, tensions climbed. Grey Worm remained loyal to Daenerys, as did Missandei and most of the Unsullied. But some of the second sons and a few lieutenants among the freed, slaves, began holding meetings without her, quiet ones Jon was not invited to, but heard about all the same. "I told you this would happen," Daenerys said, her eyes hard. "You being here, it divides us." "I didn't choose this," Jon said, "but I won't walk away from you." She looked at him then, eyes shining. "Then swear it in front of everyone. Say you will never take the throne, that you will never rule." Jon hesitated. Not because he wanted the throne, he didn't, but because something about the demand felt sharp, final, like the first cut of a deeper wound. "I swear it," he said eventually, "before gods and men, before fire and blood." She kissed him then, full of desperation and grief. But love, once tainted by suspicion, never heals clean. And someone had been listening. Varys the spider had returned. No one knew how he had found them in the Red Waste, but he always had his ways. He came with parchment and secrets and a cold expression that didn't bother hiding his judgment. "I served your father," he told Jon bluntly, "and I watched his kingdom burn." Jon didn't want to hear it. "You have no idea what I've given up to keep her safe." But Varys only nodded. "And yet here you are, her greatest threat." Daenerys tried to exile Varys. Jon convinced her not to. He said they needed his mind, his connections. She relented reluctantly, but Varys had already begun writing letters. One of them fell into Grey Worm's hands. It bore Jon's true name. The fire that followed burned 3 tents to the ground. Missandei barely escaped the blaze. Dozens were injured. No one claimed the fire, but the message was loud enough. Not all flames warm. That night, Daenerys stood in her tent, staring at a map of Westeros lit by candlelight. "They'll never let me rule with peace," she said. "Not with you beside me." Jon stood behind her. "I'll leave if that's what you want." She turned to face him, tears brimming. "I don't want you to leave. I want you to stop being who you are." Silence hung between them. Then she said the words neither of them could take back. "If you ever sit on that throne, I will burn it with you on it." Jon didn't flinch. "Then we've already lost." Outside, the dragons roared, sensing the storm breaking between their riders. The desert turned red by sunrise, not with sand or light, but with blood. It started with a raid in the night. Someone, no one knew who, had attacked one of the Unsullied outposts, killed 2 guards, and left a sigil burned into the sand. The stark direwolf carved in ash and flame. It wasn't Jon's doing, but no one cared. The message was clear. The camp fractured. Soldiers loyal to Daenerys tightened ranks, treating Jon's presence like a threat. Meanwhile, some of Jon's quiet supporters began disappearing, taken, silenced, or found dead with slits across their throats. Suspicion grew faster than wildfire, and trust died in its sleep. Daenerys no longer met Jon's eyes the same way. Her love, once burning and soft, had grown cold and sharp. She held herself like a queen now, distant, commanding, unreachable. And the more her grip on power was threatened, the more she turned to fire. She burned a caravan of suspected spies without trial. She ordered the death of a second son commander for questioning her orders. Jon argued, begged for restraint. "You're becoming what they feared," he told her. "No," she replied without blinking. "I'm becoming what they need." Varys, ever the shadow, watched with dead eyes. "She has chosen fire," he said to Jon one night. "Will you choose ice?" Jon didn't answer, because he didn't know anymore. Then came the final blow. A raven arrived from Westeros. King's Landing had fallen into chaos. Cersei was weakened. The throne sat exposed. The moment to strike was now. Daenerys saw opportunity. Jon saw risk. "We don't have enough ships, enough men," he said. "Marching now will cost thousands." "I don't care," Daenerys said. "I will not wait for another whisper to kill me in my sleep." They stood alone in her war tent. The one place where they had once found peace, now colder than any winter. "I swore to follow you," Jon said, voice low, "but not into madness." Her eyes blazed. "Madness? You think burning your way to the throne makes you a queen?" he asked. "It makes you what your father was." She slapped him. Not hard, not enough to hurt, but enough to silence everything between them. For a long time, neither moved. Then she whispered, almost broken, "If you turn your back on me now, I will never forgive you." Jon looked at her, truly looked, and saw the girl he'd known since childhood, the one who had held his hand in Dragonstone, who had whispered stories to him in the dark, who had asked him to come with her, to run, to be free. That girl was gone, or buried beneath too much ash to be found. "I'm not your enemy, Dany," he said softly, "but I won't be your weapon either." That night, as her army prepared to sail, Jon disappeared. He took no soldiers, no banners, just Ghost, his direwolf, silent and scarred, and a cloak too thin for the cold he was walking into. Daenerys watched him leave from a high dune, her dragons circling above her like angry gods. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. But the fire behind her eyes never dimmed. A week later, as ships gathered off the coast, Varys stood in the shadows with Tyrion, his voice hushed. "He's gone," Varys said, "and now there's nothing left to stop her." Tyrion's face twisted in pain. "She was supposed to break the wheel." Varys shook his head. "She's become the wheel." Far away beyond the red sands, Jon Snow, or Aegon Targaryen, rode alone into the storm. He didn't know what he was searching for. Redemption, peace, or maybe just enough distance from the woman he could never stop loving. And might. One day have to kill. Snow fell on King's Landing, not ash, not yet. Real snow, soft, silent, haunting, like the North had sent its last breath to warn the South of what was coming. The city, already torn by war and famine, held its breath beneath grey skies. The Red Keep loomed above, bruised by siege, but still standing. At its heart, Daenerys waited. She stood on the steps of the throne room, dressed not in royal silks, but in dark armor, her silver hair braided like a crown. Drogon circled above the ruins, wings stirring up broken stone and dust. The people below looked up in terror, unsure if their new queen came to save them, or to finish what Cersei could not. Behind her, Grey Worm stood silent, his face unreadable. The Unsullied formed a perfect wall of steel. The Dothraki lined the outer streets, swords raised, howling her name. The Iron Throne was near, not just in sight, but within reach, and Daenerys felt nothing, no joy, no peace, only fire. Then the gates opened, and Jon Snow walked through. He wore no crown, no armor, just the cloak of the Night's Watch, torn and weathered, the direwolf sigil, barely visible. Ghost limped beside him, fur bloodied from battles in the north. He had returned not as a prince, not as a king, but as a man with nothing left to lose. Daenerys turned as he entered the ruined hall. Their eyes met. For a moment, the years between them vanished. The caves of Dragonstone, the long talks. Under starlight, the first time he touched her hand, all of it flickered like candlelight before the storm. "I thought you were dead," she said. "I was," Jon answered, "until I saw what you've become." The words struck harder than any sword. "You left me," she said, voice shaking. "You ran." "I left because I couldn't watch. You burned the world just to claim it." Daenerys stepped down slowly, each footfall echoing in the hollow hall. "I burned what stood in my way. That's what conquerors do. That's what Aegon would have done. I'm not Aegon, Johnny said. Not anymore. A pause. Then softly, I still love you. Daenerys blinked, pain flashing through her. Then rule with me. Sit beside me. We'll tear down what's broken and build something new. Jon took a step closer. He looked at her, truly looked, and saw not a monster, not a queen, but a woman scarred by grief, twisted by destiny, driven mad by love, power, and loneliness. I can't, he said. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. She reached for his hand, and he took it. They stood there, hand in hand, surrounded by shattered stone and dreams. Then Jon kissed her, gently, like a goodbye, and drove the dagger into her heart. Her eyes widened, mouth opening in shock, not at the pain, but the betrayal. She didn't scream. She just whispered, "Why?" And Jon held her as she fell. Because I still believe in you. Drogon landed outside, roaring in agony as her body went limp in Jon's arms. The ground shook. The walls cracked. The great beast climbed into the throne room and saw her lifeless form. Jon stepped back, tears streaming, waiting for death. But Drogon didn't burn him. Instead, the dragon turned, stared at the Iron Throne, and melted it to slag. Fire roared. The metal twisted and shrieked. The throne, the symbol of every lie, betrayal, and war, was gone. Drogon took Daenerys' body, cradled her in his claws, and flew away into the storm, vanishing into snow and smoke. Jon fell to his knees, and everything went silent. Later he surrendered himself. Grey Worm wanted his head. Tyrion demanded justice. The lords and ladies of Westeros argued for weeks, each trying to claim what was left of the shattered realm. In the end, they didn't crown a king. They named Jon Snow a prisoner, banished him back to the wall, to nothing. But maybe that was what he wanted. Far beyond the north, Jon stood once more at the edge of the world, staring into endless white. He had no crown, no throne, no queen, only the weight of what he'd done and the ghosts of fire and blood behind him. But he walked on, into the cold, into the silence, into the peace that had always escaped him. Because some songs don't end in triumph, they end in truth.